Or do I have to record?
I got it.
All right, we good? We recording?
Good.
All right, hello everyone, and thanks for joining tonight this episode of the Real Estate Roundtable. All the top news makers for November 2015. I'm your host, Jayson Bates. I'm right here in Phoenix, Arizona, and host of the podcast called Valley of the Sun Real Estate Show. And you can check that out by visiting my website at www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow.com. And as always, I'm joined by or with Jorge Cuevas. Hey, how you doing, buddy?
What's going on? My name is Jorge Cuevas, and I'm the host of the Margaritas and Real Estate Marketing Podcast.
Awesome. All right, we'll turn down that music there, that little funk that's going on there, little intro music, trying something new, trying to keep it lively. All right, cool. So how was your Thanksgiving, man? Let's get that out of the way, right?
Yeah, Thanksgiving's awesome. This is the best time of year, so it's a good time of year because you get to do the family thing. You get to settle down. Business slows down a little bit, but it's also a great time for planning. It's a great time to get things ready for 2016.
Yes, it is. We're nearing the end of the year. I'm already starting to see New Year's resolutions being made, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, all the planning and everything else is the
craziness of Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yeah. But this is a time of year, so it's a regrouping and a replanning out, reevaluation of where you want to take your business to and everything else you want to try to figure out for the next year.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Let's jump into this, man, because we got a lot of stuff to cover, right? There's been a lot of news
there has
over the past month. So I want to try to touch base on all of them. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on each one. Although if the conversation warrants it, we're going to try to keep this to 45 minutes to an hour tops, which is not easy to do here on Blab. For some reason, we end up going 60 minutes. So I apologize to everybody who's listening on the podcast or the replay on YouTube or whatever. But we try to bring as relevant as information as we possibly can. So number one here, let's get right into it. I read some articles here, and I want to get your thoughts on this here, Jorge, is Bitcoin. Now, there was a property purchased in California,
right,
using Bitcoin only.
Right.
Now, I thought that would be kind of crazy, right? Because Bitcoin is not it's a universal, worldwide recognized currency, if you will, online currency. And to be able to purchase real estate, I think that could stir the pot here a little bit. What do you think?
Well, that was the first property to be purchased with Bitcoin, right? What was it?
I think
that was
the
first.
Actually. There was one in Thailand. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the first property.
Yeah. And see, the whole thing is there is no doubt there's a following of people around the world of Bitcoin and how all that works. And I don't understand a lot of it myself, other than it's a set currency. Like they're not producing any more of it. It's all online based. And so it's the key is that, I don't know, the shares or the coins or however they divide that stuff up, it rises as more and more as it develops value in itself. So if someone was willing, I guess you just needed someone on the other side of the transaction willing to take the purchase in the form of Bitcoin. The transaction had to take, it was a transfer of funds using Bitcoin and stuff like that. And I guess it's something that I don't see like being a trend or anything like that that's going to take off. But as long as there's more, there is a small community of people that are surrounded around using Bitcoin and investing in it and using it as a means to exchange goods and services and to develop value, then it would make sense that it's just a matter of time before somebody in the U.S. tries to use it for purchasing property.
Well, the IRS has already recognized, they put a ruling out in March that they recognize it as real property and it's taxed as such.
Right.
The IRS is recognizing it. Maybe there's a movement. Now, the way I understand Bitcoin is there's only going to be so many Bitcoins, if you will, released.
Right. That's already been set. Like according to them, it's already set. There's the amount of Bitcoins that are out there, and they'll never make more Bitcoins. I think that's what it is. I'm no expert at it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I've read too. They're not going to make any more. So the value will depend on the demand for it, I suppose. So
Yeah. It's just one of those. It's another story about technology and some of these things that are new out there, and Bitcoin is about you. It's a currency that's all developed about around technology, and I think it's just a matter of time before we see more stuff like that happen. It would have been really interesting to see how they did that at the closing table, or how that was done with the title company, or how that happened. Like the actual details and nitty gritty between how the transaction actually transpired.
yeah, it would. And I don't know if it was handled like cash. They didn't go into a lot of detail in the article about it, but it was a pretty expensive. I think it was like 1.4 million or something like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a chump change $50,000 type of home.
Yeah.
It was a pretty expensive home. So I guess we'll see more of those in the future, and time will only tell as far as that story is to be continued, I suppose.
Right. I guess the moral story for real estate agents, and if you have a client that says they want to buy a house in Bitcoin, it actually has been done.
Yeah, it's been done, right? So consider ourselves there. So now the next one here I want to get into too is the Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac third quarter posted their loss for third quarter, which is a bit of a downer, bit of a bummer, right? Because we would think by now that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae would be posting some profits here, as they have been government backed.
They have been posting profits in the last 2 years, I think. They have been posting profits, and I think this quarter is the first one, in 6 or I don't know how many quarters it's been, but it's a first one in several quarters that they lost money, or they're posting a loss.
I don't know. I think last year they had, according to the article, they had, and this I think was from Inman. No, it was from National Mortgage News. .com that reported this, that I pulled the article from. They had a $600 million loss last year at the same time. So maybe they had loss, and then they take it right before the end of the year, kind of thing. Third quarter, I don't know.
And they should have a couple quarter, right? I think the moral here, the main thing with Freddie and Fannie is that I don't right now, and you probably see more into this. We don't see a plan for them to come out of this conservatorship, right? Like the federal government is going to continue to run them, and I think for real estate agents, and then for people that are buying homes and financing them, that impact that Freddie and Fannie has on the mortgage lending industry, I think is absolutely huge. They're changing the rules of the game. I think that if they're not making money, if they're posting losses, and they have what's considered to be a growing share of the loans that are being purchased out there in a secondary market, right? I mean, they
are it. I mean, right now they are. It's like $6 trillion or something like that. It's a large number.
It's completely opposite to the way it was prior to the crash, right? When they were a player, but they were not the dominant force in the game, right? I mean, they were, but not to the extent they are today.
Yeah, it's kind of narrowed down. That funnel is narrowed down to it's Fannie, Freddie right now. You don't have some of the independent portfolio lenders that we had before. It says here in the article, it says Freddie's third quarter loss was attributed largely to accounting losses from derivatives, financial transactions that the company uses to hedge against swings in interest rates. So somebody's not hedging properly. Maybe they thought the interest rates are going to increase sooner than what they have. I don't know. But hopefully in the next year, 2016, we'll start to see some profit there. And I think that once that turns into a profit, they'll start, I think Congress or wherever it's at now, will start that conversation back up about either getting rid of Freddie, Fannie, or consolidating them or something. That's been stalled.
Yeah, that has been stalled, and I don't see, with everything that's going on in Washington D.C., I don't see there's a push for that. Freddie and Fannie from both political parties, they people like to talk bad about them and stuff like that, and I'm not a fan of them or anything like that, but I don't see there being a big push for that to happen. But I do have a problem with them losing money, though. That should be a concern to everybody, because they have such a huge impact on the industry as a whole, and that impact that they have today is not going away. Now we're saying that they're losing money. Now, basically, if they're losing money, they can't go bankrupt because the federal government's just going to inject more cash into it. But that doesn't mean that it's right. What it means is that I think in the future we have more potential problems for another type of a different type of crash than we had before, but a crash in lending from the federal government, and whether it comes in, whether interest rates have to be jumped up, or they have to prop up fees. What we're talking about here is a Freddie and Fannie should be making money with the amount of business and the amount of revenue and the amount of loans that they're producing. And we're saying that they're not making money, and they're borrowing money at 0%. They're not being charged to borrow any money to buy all those loans in a secondary. So the fact that they're losing money, that to me is kind of scary. It is scary for the future of where real estate is going to be headed, because we all want there to be a secure, safe place for people to buy homes and sell homes in. And for that, we need to have a secondary market in place, an efficient, well-run secondary market, so people can purchase homes and get those loans. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's to be continued. I think that's, our politicians that work on some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So let's get to let's move on from that. It's a little depressing, man.
It is. It is, but it is a major problem, and it's one of those things that I think in our industry, I don't see NAR talking a lot about it, or anything like that, and we're not building for the future, and we're not setting anything up for the future. And if anything, if we didn't learn anything as an industry, that should be the one thing that real estate agents, real estate mortgage brokers, the banks, the federal government, everyone should have a vested interest that we don't go back to 2008 again.
Well, and I saw another article was posted about a week ago that said that they wanted to leverage Fannie Freddie to finance the roads and infrastructure in the United States. Like, how's that going to happen if we're losing money? I don't know. Fuzzy math, George Bush. I don't know.
It was a congressman or a senator. No, that happened because they posted a profit. Like, I don't know if it was last quarter or the quarter before. They posted a huge profit, and some senator or congressman came out with that and said, they're making money now. We need to, we bought them, we bailed them out. Now we need to get them to start paying for roads and stuff. And it was just, it was so backwards ass logic behind it that and those are the people that are in charge of overseeing Freddie and Fannie.
Yeah, imagine that, right? Okay, so let's move on. I want to talk about here, and Jamie, I see your comments there, buddy. Thanks for posting that stuff. The rise of crowdfunding in purchasing real estate. I'm seeing a trend, especially like in Las Vegas, maybe there in Chicago a little bit, where you have high-rise buildings that may have some trouble raising funds. But these projects were put in place many years ago. But because of the restriction and some of the lending that's going on, they're turning to crowdfunding on purchasing, raising capital. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I think it's just technology. It's technology, and it's a combination of technology and new ways for raising money that's just coming into play. And it's going to be interesting to see how it's still in the very beginning phases. So we don't know where all that's headed and stuff. But crowdfunding can be a very efficient way to raise capital, and it's an end run to the banks, not dealing with the banks and then just dealing with people that have that have a interest in what you're trying to put together, and they just want to get a piece of that pie or some, whatever. That I like that. I think that's the wave of the future. It's definitely a wave of the future for startups. I mean, there's so many successful startups that have come out of that, out of, whether it's Indiegogo or whatever, or GoFundMe, and there's like several of them out now.
Yeah, but and there's more coming online all the time.
Yeah, they absolutely work. It just comes down to, can we get enough people to raise cash for real estate projects like that one that they're talking about doing? I think it's awesome. It's awesome to see how that plays out.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think they do this quite a bit in China. I think it's kind of a big deal. Shanghai, which is kind of the far east, Las Vegas, if you will. I think they've done that quite extensively. I've seen some articles there. So it seems to work out pretty good. A little risky for me. I'd have to know that it's kind of all set and done, even though your investment, if I'm investing just $100,000, that might be my life savings into a deal. Knowing the investor and how they're going to utilize that money and make sure they're going to stay on budget and stay on plan and put together the product that they're, portraying they're going to do, I think is, and
right now there is a certain level of honesty with crowdfunding. We don't hear a lot of scams. I think one of the first fraud cases in I don't know if it was on Indiegogo or GoFundMe, but the first fraud case actually I think just came out this last week. So it's going to be interesting to see if it gets taken advantage of in real estate. Unfortunately, we have a lot of shady characters. And when it comes to the world of finance, there's people that will find all sorts of crazy schemes and stuff like that, try to raise money and to bankrupt the asset and cash out or whatever, So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep it pure and keep the honesty up with the people that get engaged in it.
Yep. All right, cool. So now the next one here I've got here is TRID and the impact it's had. TRID was rolled out October 3rd, right? And we're now at the point where we're starting to close deals, if you will. They've kind of gone through the whole process. Lenders are still figuring that part out and what that means. Because I just spoke to a gentleman here in Phoenix. He was off on TRID by $8. And that $8 cost him almost that loan. At least it cost him his commission on that deal. And so over $8. And so there is still some gray areas that lenders really haven't figured out yet, which, shame on lenders, shame on, the government for not being crystal clear on how some of the stuff needs to be worked out. But at the end of the day, I think it is a good thing. I like the simplicity of it. I like the disclosure. I like, how simple it is to read. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to work out just fine. And I don't think it's really going to have that big of an impact. But we are in this little phase here where uncertainty, where it is causing a little bit of chaos.
Are you seeing problems with the title companies, with the realtors giving you the information accurately? Like, where do you see issues?
Yeah. So on that deal there, the title company provided the fees through the contract, because they were dictated on who we're going to use for title company.
Right.
But the lender interpreted that saying, well, that's something that the customer couldn't necessarily shop for. So you picked it as a lender. This lender was blaming the loan officer for picking that title company. And they came back and interpreted saying, look, if you had quoted fees from a lender that somebody else picked, then you wouldn't have to pay that $8 and you wouldn't lose your commission on the deal. And he's sitting there saying, well, wait a minute. I didn't pick the title company. The realtor did. And they said, no, you did pick the company when you put it on the fees, when you quoted their fees. And to which I was saying, which I was a little bit confused, why isn't the title company eating that? Why aren't they sucking it up? If they messed up the quote, why aren't they sucking it up? But the title company wouldn't budge on their fees either. And so there was a little bit of an impasse there. And so as a conservative little approach, I think the lender just said, you know what, since nobody's going to budge, we're going to budge and we're not going to pay your commission. That's just how we're going to handle it. And that's that gray area there that I think is, something that will be worked out at some point. But right now, I think they're just taking a real conservative approach toward it.
Right. I've been hearing problems with title companies not having their shit together. I've been hearing, I've seen, from what I've heard, I've seen a lot of mortgage brokers have seemed to be pretty proactive. Even if they made a mistake, they're all definitely aware of it, and they all have definitely attended their fair share of training classes and stuff and fix a lot of their systems. So on the mortgage broker side, I haven't seen too many issues in terms of them not knowing what they're doing. But now, like you said, it's just getting all the different parties to work together. And it's basically kind of like the way it was before, other than the fact that now we've got this 7-day, this 7 or 5 day grace period. What was it, 7 days or 5 days? this grace
Well,
period when the settlement statement has to be sent out to all parties before the closing.
Well, it can't be issued any less than 3 days prior to consummation, and no earlier than 7 days, no later than 7. So you got to close. If you disclose the closing disclosure, you got to close that deal within 7 days.
Right.
That's the bottom.
Right.
So
and if there's a change, any changes made to it, like let's say the statement gets sent out and it comes out that the prorations are off by $8, like or something like that.
Right.
What happens at that point? Do you have to recreate a new settlement statement, and then all parties have to get it again, and then you've got to wait that a few more days, right?
Yeah. So then you got to wait another 3 days, but you got to have documentation as to what you're changing, right? And that's where the title company wouldn't provide that documentation. So that lender kind of blamed it on the loan officer, and it was kind of a big mess. Right. You know, I think right now there's just extra precaution from a lender's perspective. I know when I'm sending out disclosures, I'm like triple checking them right now. And then I've got a whole, QC, quality control department, whatever, that is looking at them as well. And they're double checking them. So disclosures that I used to be able to send out in a couple hours now are taking maybe a day and a half to 2 days to get out, depending on volume. So there is that little bit of a delay, if you will, but it's all in the interest of just making sure everything is buttoned up real tight.
Right. No, it is fascinating, and some of I think that where do we go? Like, where do you see things with TRID in the first quarter for next year? Is there any new rules being proposed right now or anything like that, or is it the way it is right now is the way it's going to be at least for the next several months?
Yeah, I think the way it is now is the way it's going to be. It's just getting used to it and getting the right checks in place. Because here's what's happening with lenders, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time because I'm just going off a tangent on this, but the CFPB is cracking down. I mean, we have now, I just saw an article just today, Quicken Loans is going to stop possibly doing FHA loans because they were being sued by the CFFHA or whatever it is, Consumer Financial Housing Authority or whatever. CFF. So, not the CFPB, but the Consumer Financial Housing Agency.
Okay.
They sued Quicken Loans, and Quicken Loans is like, well, wait a minute, you're not clear on your guidelines. You're suing us. If that's the case, then we'll just back out of doing FHA loans. So there's that hesitation from lenders, and so they're taking extra precaution on these deals to make sure that they've got it buttoned up. And I'll tell you, I've talked to like 4 different lenders. And each lender then, gets advice from their attorneys, and each attorney interprets the law slightly different. And so now you have 4 different interpretations of TRID. And until there's some rulings that set some foundation out there, some guideline, we're going to have, this little mix up, if you will. So I don't see it changing. I see it dust kind of settling a little bit.
Yeah.
And us just getting better at providing the necessary disclosures.
Yeah, and it's almost it almost felt like to me that the way that they have laid down the new rules and the disclosures and everything else was almost like it felt like to me like they almost wanted mortgage companies to fuck it up and banks to fuck it up, and they wanted to make some examples of some banks and mortgage companies and stuff like that, because I've heard that same thing, that the guidelines and the rules for the banks are just not 100% clear. And, and that's really crazy when you start talking about, why isn't it clear? If anything should be clear, should be crystal clear for all parties involved. Cause that it's supposed to be fixing the problems that we had, before 2008.
Yeah. In fact, there's the FHFA. There's an article here too that says lenders don't understand the guidelines. Mm-hmm. And so there is some interpretation, and some of that is just legal. We talk to our attorneys saying, hey, protect us here. Are we stepping out on a limb? What should we do? And they tell us one thing, and then you've got competitors, attorneys telling them something else. And then to stay competitive in the market, you've got to kind of keep pace with everybody else. And then some of these guidelines get a little blurred, if you will.
Right.
But once things get kind of ironed out, I think it'll be good. I do like the format and the disclosure and how it's very clear to the consumer as to what they need, what the interest rate is, what the costs are, all that kind of stuff. That is good.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad they did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But all the other rules and details.
I know. It's crazy. To be determined, right? We'll keep it up on that. So now realtor.com, let's get into this a little bit real quick. This is kind of what we've talked about this before. Realtor.com really going after Zillow here, putting an ad campaign out there saying, hey, you guys don't even have all the listings. We do. So if you're going to realtor, you're going to list on Zillow, you're missing out. You should be listing on putting your listing on realtor.com. Kind of a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's realtor.com trying to play catch up, and they're trying to, it's sort of like, do you remember back in the 80s, you had Coke and Pepsi, and they were competing against one another. And then I think Pepsi had like the taste test things, and they would go show up like at grocery stores, and then they would like get people at a table and be like, oh, here's 2 cups of soda pop, drink one and tell us which one is better. And then 9 times out of 10, everyone chooses Pepsi, right? And and so Pepsi was saying, look, our soda is better, and everyone likes it when they don't know what it is and they drink it, they like it better, and they kept hammering it over and over again that our stuff is just better.
Right.
And it didn't. If you study that, we studied that in college, and that advertising campaign was never successful in turning around sales for Pepsi. And not the way they were expecting it to. And that was a huge campaign they ran with this taste test. And to me, this is the same exact thing. You got like realtor.com is like, we all know that the Zillow data is not in sync with the MLS. It's dated, it's incorrect a lot of times. Its estimates are all over the place. But the problem is that the consumers today, they don't care about that as much. They want Zillow and Trulia to work, and they prefer using Zillow, Trulia, or Redfin, or in some cases, Realtor.com. So like what you have happening with Realtor.com is they're trying to say, hey, we're better, we're more accurate, our data is 99% accurate or 100% accurate and better than Zillow and stuff. And the problem with that is that when you have to pounce on your competition and say, hey, we're better, so you should go check us out, that's not a message that's going to come across the public, and it's not going to get people to be like, well, realtor.com is saying that they're more accurate and better. I think we should start doing our search over there. And then they get over to realtor.com and they say, well, the search isn't as good as it is on Zillow and Trulia, so I'm going to go back to Zillow, Trulia, or Redfin. So you haven't fixed the real problem, which is the interface and the consumer experience that people get when they're using Zillow and Trulia. Like, they don't care as much about the inaccurate data because they keep going there. And they like the interface, right? They like the experience.
Yeah, we don't care what Donald Trump says, but his support still is growing.
Yeah. Same thing.
So, all right. So now I want to talk about this because last month was a big deal. The Paris attacks. So I wanted to bring this up a little bit. Not because of Paris, but just terrorism and the effects that it can have on housing. Now, some people say, well, hey, terrorism, that's across the pond. It doesn't really affect us here. When in fact it does. And the economy is a worldwide economy now. It's not just a local hyper economy. It's a world economy, so through our exports and things like that, and some of the resources that we're now having to and will and should dedicate to fighting terrorism. And so the economy is a big engine that terrorism can disrupt, and that can eventually trickle down to home prices.
Well, it's just that it has an effect on the economy in that it can stall the economy. It can a terrorist attack on U.S. soil, like in September 11th, when you have a fragile economy, and we don't have a fully recovered economy,
right?
We have a lot of issues in our economy, and so a terrorist attack, is something that could cause another event, a financial event to happen, which it's the one thing that our economy I don't think can handle right now. And so, it's one of those things where you can't
stop
you can't plan for it. You can't, yeah, you can't worry about it.
Right.
And if anything, the Paris terrorist attack should have told the real estate industry that, listen, we really need to be concerned with strengthening our industry. And like we're just talking about the lending stuff earlier, and there's crazy rules in place that banks don't understand. Freddie and Fannie are losing money. These are important elements and pillars to the real estate industry, and if anything, that should just strengthen the call that, you know, these institutions and these systems we have in place to keep a secondary mortgage market in place and to keep banks out there lending money has to be fiscally strong. And that's a scary thing that we're not. You know, what are we? Several years after the crash, our industry. I don't know if you could honestly say like our industry is that much more improved or that much more secure than it was before. I mean, the good thing is that you're not giving loans out to people with just social security numbers. You're actually doing checking and all that stuff. So we fixed that problem, and that's an obvious fix. But we're still giving out. We're doing FHA loans with 3.5% down. In many cases, no money down.
Right.
You're giving. You got loan programs that are letting people buy houses without any money down and down payment assistance. And those aren't the type of programs, I think, that are going to create a very strong housing market. You want people to have liquidity in their homes. You need people to have liquidity in their homes. Because how many people do you think out there, how many millions of houses out there bought a home in the last 2 years? And if there was some type of disruption to the economic activity in the United States and prices drop 5% or 10%, and when the unemployment rate trickles down because of that, how many people have to sell and are not in an equity position?
Well, okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, okay? Because there is another article, and and maybe it's perception or whatever, but according to this article here, it says, shocking figures on mortgages. Properties now, there's less mortgage debt now than what there was in 2000. It looks like 2011. I don't have my glasses here. There's about $300 billion less in mortgage debt. Now, we've had a lot of people get very, very rich on the stock market over the past 5 years, right? So there's been a lot of cash. I'm still surprised how many people actually pay full cash for a house, and it's not a $50,000 house, but a pretty expensive house. So there's a lot of liquidity out there, and I don't know if people are still seeing the bargains or what their perception is on real estate. But if you look at values now versus 2003, they're below. I think we're like 2001 values or something like that.
We're somewhere, 2002, 2003 values is basically where we're back to right now. So we recovered a big chunk of the loss, but we're not in a much better place though today. And I think that's just because we have low inventory and prices went up. I think this year they're estimating prices are across the board for the U.S. is about 5 to 6%, but definitely no more than 6%. And next year, all the like CoreLogic and NAR and everyone is estimating 5% increase. No one's anticipating any more than 5% on home value price increases. Yeah. And that's because I don't think anybody sees any big grand thing happening in the economy. No one sees like the economy really going up dramatically, but no one sees it going down dramatically. We're kind of like in this very weird place where we're just sort of, it's kind of like a drift to me.
Yeah. All right, cool. So now let's move on to another one, and prayers go out obviously to Paris. It was a tragic deal. So hopefully we can move on and we can all do what needs to be done, which I think everybody's on the same page as far as that goes when it comes to terrorism. All right, so now Google. I want to talk about Google here a little bit. Google's always kind of throwing things out there, right? This is kind of crazy. Hey, how you doing? Google now is doing the Google Compare for mortgages.
Right.
It's in California only, but soon to be rolled out in other states. They just launched it, I think, 2 weeks ago, where you can actually compare your mortgage against competitors, see if you're getting a good deal. To which I say, I don't know if that's that big of a deal. Sounds kind of cool, right? Google's been doing that with airline tickets. I think you can do Google compare to airline tickets and see that you got the best deal, like TripAdvisor or something like that. I think there's what they're trying to compete with. But Google's pulling this information from LendingTree and I think one other website. I forget what it is, bankrate.com or something maybe.
It's one of those. So if you're a bank, you have to be on one of those websites to get onto the Google onto the Google spreadsheet there for mortgage rates.
And I'll tell you, I used to be a part of LendingTree. This is probably about 8 years ago or so. And there's a lot of misleading that's going on LendingTree. Let me just put it that way. A lot of overpromise, underdeliver going on there. So, I don't know how effective this is going to be, but it's another attempt of Google trying to, get into other aspects of the internet, I guess, if you will, and be a resource for people, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, information is a good thing, but, bad information is a bad thing. And I think that could be misleading a little bit.
Every business owner out there, big or small, has a love-hate relationship with Google. Because if you play Google's game and you work the system right, you can get your website ranked, and that's how you drive traffic and then conversion and leads and everything else. And everybody wants that. But you have to also play Google's game, and they do have enormous power just because there's so much of the search is directed towards Google. And so with the mortgage things, what's incredible about it is that it's going to be interesting to see any kind of legal ramifications that come out of that, because you are going to have like this just these certain lenders that are on, whether it's I think you're right, it's definitely LendingTree and maybe it's bankrate.com, where they're going to take whoever's on those sites, and it's just going to be interesting to see like what's going to happen with the future of mortgage if people do follow it and it becomes popular and people just go to Google to look for those mortgage rates. Is there any kind of legal impact for the mortgage brokers and for Google in that like, are they steering people towards these certain lenders? Because those, and then LendingTree and Bankrate will be able to charge higher prices to get those lenders in there. But will those lenders necessarily be the best prices?
Right.
The best rates and everything. And then that's where, with all these new lending guidelines and the steering stuff and everything else, that's where I kind of want I kind of think it'll be interesting to see where that all plays out.
Yeah, and Karen asks here, do you think that TRID will make sites like LendingTree be less bait and switch type of deal? I don't think so, because the TRID doesn't really happen until you have an application and then you disclose.
Yeah.
And most lenders then say, oh, well, the rates changed or the market moved or this and that. And especially with, the whole thing of the rates are going to go up by the end of the year. We're hearing a lot of buzz about that right now, with unemployment being held pretty steady. There's a lot of pressure to start increasing rates, which kind of leaves lenders a back door wide open to say, hey, your rate's gone up, and they blame it on, the market. So, I don't think TRID's going to have any impact on the bait and switch, unfortunately, for LendingTree.
But that doesn't mean that like the CFPB or whatever that new board is.
Yeah.
What are they called? Is this Consumer
Financial Bureau? Yeah.
There's no doubt that like organizations like that, a regulatory organization that has that right now is kind of waving its waving its big stick right now with the banks and everything.
Right.
It will be interesting to see if they see that, because that was a national story. It'll be interesting to see like when stuff like that pops up, does the CFPB want to interject and have a say about what Google is going to do or not do.
Yeah. So speaking of which, right? So another article that came out last week, Prospect Mortgage. I don't know if you have Prospect Mortgage there in Chicago or not.
I had a meeting with Prospect yesterday.
They're a pretty big company. I think they're a national company. I don't know if they're in all states, but fairly well recognized mortgage company. They were just fined, and they need to refund fees to consumers in the tune of about $10.1 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's a ruling down from the CFPB. And it was in overcharging of settlement fees to consumers. Now, the interesting thing about this, and this article doesn't really go into this, But there have been similar rulings this year in regards to overcharging of fees, especially on you mentioned the down payment assistance programs.
Right.
Lenders, what happens for us, like I'm individually licensed. When that happens, the CFPB can attach, if that were one of my customers, consumer or buyers, they could attach a black mark against my license, even though the company that I work for is the one who said that what we need to charge. So, for example, on a down payment assistance program, there are certain fixed fees in order to accomplish or get that down payment assistance. That direction is provided by where you hang your license. So it'd be like HomeSmart telling you, hey, you're going to charge this on a home inspection because this is the way it is. And you say, okay, fine, work hard. And then they come back and say, oh, well, we overcharged by $50. So guess what, Jorge? You're going to have a mark against your license because we told you wrong. So there's a little unfairness, I guess, to lenders. And with that being said, the guys at Prospect Mortgage, they say, well, hey, now there's a black mark on there. I got to get out of here. I got to move companies because I don't want to be associated, guilty by association. So then they come and look at, for me to hire them or something, and I won't hire them because they have a black mark on their license. So it's
when did that come? When did it happen?
Let's see here. It doesn't say when it happened. Says here $10.1 million for collecting $202.50 in settlement service fees from each borrower, which exceeded the actual cost of the services by an average of $37.50. The fees were charged by an appraisal affiliate named C2C Appraisal Services, or were performed by Prospect employees. An audit showed Prospect failed to disclose it properly and failed to maintain adequate documentation to loan files.
So, I mean, basically, it's just one of the ways they make money. They're paying one thing to get the works done, but they're charging another thing, which is it's just marked up, and everything we do is marked up. Yeah. If you go buy anything from a retail store, it's been marked up from the manufacturer costs and stuff. I think that goes right into the whole thing with the guidelines and stuff. Because are they saying you just charge too much money and we don't like that you charge this much? So if it costs $37 and they charged $50, would that have been okay for them to do? Because what I don't think I think that's another guideline question where there's like the guidelines aren't clear on what they can or can't do anymore, what they can charge or what they can't charge.
If it's in favor of the consumer, now these are fees that consumers cannot shop for. So an appraisal being one of them. So if it's in favor of the consumer, then, shame on you. You should have had your accounting in line. But if it's at disadvantage to the consumer, then you need to be the advocate for the consumer, and that needs to be spot on. It needs to be spot on.
So can you charge, like if you're a lender, like has Prospect Mortgage or any other large lending institution, what can they mark up for, or are they supposed to do everything at cost?
At cost, pretty much. Like third party fees that the consumer cannot shop for. So whatever they cannot shop for, they can't shop for credit report, appraisal, that sort of thing. Now I will tell you this: what's happened to some of the third party on
those kind of fees. On third-party fees, and they can't mark up?
Correct. You have to.
Is that how it works?
Yeah. See, what probably Prospect had here is they had an invoice for, $450, and they charged, $475 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that practice happening with a lot of lenders. When I talk to consumers and even realtors, for that matter, this is why dealing with a lender who services their own loans is so vitally important, because we have a lot more at stake. Because we have to have certain financial backing in order to service the loans that we perform. It's kind of like lending your own money. If you lend your own money, you're less apt to take risks than if you're lending somebody else's money. That's why brokers, when they lend somebody else's money, there's some fraud. There's an enticement there for potential fraud. And so the CFPB, HUD, FHA, they don't like that. They don't like that third party origination, if you will. And so when you speak to a lender, you want to ask them if they're servicing the loans, because if they are, they've got the financial backing, and they're going to take somewhat of the correct approach when it comes to trying to interpret some of these rules and guidelines. Not saying that Prospect doesn't, because they do service their own loans.
Yeah, they do, right?
Yeah, they do. Not all of them. I think they're working on that servicing portfolio.
Right.
But it takes time. It takes time to build that up. So Prospect is a good company. I have nothing negative to say about Prospect. This is just an instance where maybe they put the cart before the horse and thought they could, do something. And like you said before, the interpretation of the guideline can be a little blurred sometimes. And that may be the case right here.
Right. And then is it actually fixing the problem? And that's the whole problem with this whole thing, is that every realtor, every organization should be concerned with, okay, how do we make the real estate industry for real estate agents? How do we make the mortgage business for mortgage brokers? How do we make the banks? How do we make everybody happy? How do we create a system where everybody can make money, everyone can do business honestly, and we can execute our jobs? And where is the clear guidelines and the clear rules on what we can't do, what we can't and can do? Because without that, you've got chaos, and like Prospect Mortgage, to me, like that doesn't sound like a $10 million fine type of thing. It sounds more like, hey, you guys just stop doing this. These are new guidelines. And, well, I don't know. I don't know what the right fee amount is, but $10 million for charging that, I don't know. It just seems, it just doesn't seem like something like that fixes the problem in the first place.
Here's the deal though, Jorge. Last year was the year of warning. This year, I've said to everybody, this is the year of enforcement. So the CFPB came out last year saying, hey, look, we're going to start making examples of mortgage companies. And that's what they're doing. And I don't necessarily disagree with it, because there are a lot of fly by the seat of your pants companies out there that just think that they're not too big to fail, but they just can do whatever the heck they want. Not saying that Prospect has done that here, but I have seen local brokers here do things like point banking and some other things that are just not right. But they've gotten away with it because of budget cuts and things like that. Here in the state of Arizona, Department of Financial Institutions, they just don't have the manpower to go out and audit every single company in Arizona. They just don't have it. They don't have the budget for it.
But then, okay, so the rule is that if it's something that the buyer can't shop, then they cannot upcharge on it. They have to charge what the cost is, right?
Correct.
Is that and it's clear like that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I guess in that case, in cases like that, if it's clear, then they shouldn't have been. Okay, then you're right. Then they shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. Yeah. I was just kind of thinking like they're doing it as a business practice, but it's not legal or it's not illegal or no one knows. But you're saying that
it could be an honest mistake too, right? I mean, not say honest, but it could be like, hey, we had this appraisal company. This is what they charged. We switched, yet we didn't update our system to reflect the switch, and our system kept on charging X when it's pre-populated in, kind of auto populates the fees and things into the disclosures, and they didn't update it. Could be an IT issue, right? But CFPB says, hey, we don't care. It is what you overcharged, therefore it's your mistake. So, it does keep people in line, and this is where it kind of gets lenders gun shy. We talked about TRID there a little bit. This is where lenders I just see taking precaution and taking extra time to make sure they get it right, because nobody wants to pay $10 million to the government for nothing.
Right, exactly. That's a huge, huge freaking fine.
So, which brings me to the next thing here. Okay, which I'm starting to see this trend here of trying to streamline mortgages. So, Quicken Loans came out with this new mortgage product. It's called Rocket Mortgage, and they promise. Okay. Quicken Loans announced a new online mortgage process that it claims will give a borrower a full approval, keyword full approval, in 8 minutes. Which 8 minutes, now why they came up with 8 minutes? Because that's how long it takes a rocket ship to leave Earth's orbit, is 8 minutes. So that's
what kind of approval is that?
Mortgage, right? According to Quicken Loans, the site has options to compare and customize interest rates, mortgage terms, monthly payments, and fees based on individualized financial information and goals. Now, what I find kind of interesting here, you rely on your loan officer to lock your loan and be honest with you as to what the rates are doing, right? Consumers just I think they might be onto something. I don't like the whole thing of 8 minutes, and I'm not saying that because I'm a lender, right? And I think I'm going to go out of business. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're opening themselves up to quite a bit of risk. However, if I allowed a consumer access to lock their own interest rate in, I think there could be some traction with that. Why do you need a loan officer to lock in your interest rate? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. The thing that's so crazy about it is that interest rates are so freaking low. So like if it goes up, if it goes up a quarter of a point, and like, what are rates today? I don't even check anymore. Like, what are they? What's the going rate
conforming
right now for a 30-year fix?
I don't like the quote rates, but because I have to quote then APR and all that kind of stuff. But they're low,
They're historically low. They're so freaking historically low, right?
Right. So,
right. So like you just can't. I don't know. It's silly because all we're doing is we're training more consumers to go after this rate and shop for this rate. But the difference in what you're paying, from a 3.75 to a 4% rate is so minuscule, and it's so it's so cheap. As compared to the history of us doing mortgages, in the United States, that's a part of it I just don't get.
Well, we're splitting hairs there, right?
Yeah.
Which you need to have some hair up there, buddy. A little cold in Chicago, isn't it, right?
Right. Yeah, but it definitely sounds way too fast. It would seem to bring up all sorts of red flags and problems and issues.
I think they're opening themselves up to potential lawsuits and things like that. But it got me thinking, like, hey, if I provided a website, you just go there and I listed the rates, and hey, you pick your rate, you pick it. Why do you got to call me to lock it? So there is some traction there, especially with technology and stuff like that. Maybe that will be the future. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. Now we're getting a little bit low on time here, but let's get into the next thing here, which is conforming loan limits. That didn't change. It did change in some counties. Tennessee, I saw Tennessee around Nashville. Loan limits actually went up by about $15,000 or $20,000. They're like $537,000. I don't lend in Tennessee, so I don't keep up with that. But for most of the United States, the conforming loan limit remained unchanged, even though we're seeing values of homes go up quite a bit over the past year. So we'll see what kind of impact that has, especially in New York and in California.
Yeah, New York, California, Hawaii, all the places with the higher priced real estate. Absolutely.
Yeah, and why
that will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, because that may subside kind of the white hotness, if you will, of those markets. Because in conforming loan limits, it's a little bit easier to get a loan than it is in a jumbo arena. So a lot of people try to go conforming when they can.
Right.
Okay, so I think let's see here. I think that might be it, brother.
Yeah, and you know what? We're on time. We are we're just at an hour, so that's great.
There was one article. This is kind of boring. One article about banks and doing portfolio, and what came to mind there was Compass Bank. Compass does a lot of portfolio lending. They're saying that those kind of banks that do a lot of portfolio lending and don't have it securitized with Fannie Freddie could see losses on their mortgages in the future, because lending money at a 4% rate, for example, when you're borrowing at 1%, is pretty good spread. But if it's at 3%, whether you're borrowing money to lend on that portfolio, you may look at that deal a little bit as a higher risk because the yield spread just isn't there.
Yeah, that would change their. Yeah, but that's going to change. Won't that? If because right now every bank out there is borrowing on, is it the discount rate they call it? They're borrowing at 0% essentially, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Which is called
I think it's at a 0.25%, right? Maybe it's below 0, but it's really, really low. I don't deal with that.
Which is called and for all the banks, it's called the discount rate. The money they borrow money from, right? The money that they borrow money to lend out and stuff. Yeah. So their business model has been predicated on that, on borrowing at that basically it's almost free money,
right,
for a bank.
Now, real quick here, and I know we got about 2 minutes here, but the CFPB, they're still looking at, and I'm still baffled by this. When they say still, or they're looking at this, says the CFP examiners will start looking at the racial impact of underwriting criteria.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I saw that. That one's a little bit older, right? That came out. That was like last month, or
yeah, I think
or like 2 months ago.
November, actually, at the beginning, maybe the end of October. But I don't know if that's motivated by what's happened in our country. Obviously, we've had a lot of racial,
pure political.
Yeah,
pure political, and that's a scary part about that organization, or about that department, or whatever you call the organization, department, whatever, because they're not regulated by Congress, I think, right? The only person that has any power over them is the president.
I believe so. I don't know. I believe you're right, but I'm
typical
not 100%.
Typical governmental agencies are like the DEA, the FDA. They're all agencies that are under the purview of Congress, but the CFPB, even though Congress set it up, it doesn't answer to them. So they kind of have like this, not a blank check, but they can do things that they can just do things that they can do things without the oversight of Congress, or like a committee and stuff like that, and that's very dangerous. And that's, to me, like, them getting into that is purely just a political move. And whenever you have a governmental agency that tries to dictate policy, and and especially when you're talking about race and everything else, it never works.
Yeah, the intent is good. I mean, I don't know. I've often wondered about race and lending. I've never seen a discriminatory type approach toward anybody in underwriting criteria or anything like that. It's purely based on merit and credit qualifying. So I don't know if there's a trend out there or what, but I'll be honest with you. I don't even know why we asked the question. On the application, we have to ask, what is your sex and your race, and you don't have to answer that. As a
just be all finance. Should be all financials.
Yeah, I don't even know why we ask, to be honest with you, but we do, and so it's another avenue.
The problem is that in minority neighborhoods, everyone knows it, but no one talks about it. You just have a tendency where there's going to be more borrowers in minority neighborhoods that have less money and less credit worthiness. And less money and less credit worthiness leads to you getting rejected more times for loans. Yeah, it's just that simple. It's the same way like college kids. You don't see mortgage banks on college university campuses trying to get students to buy houses when they get out of college, because the average student's got so much debt. Those are not the borrowers you want. They don't have jobs yet and stuff. So for the banks, it makes perfect sense that you're going to end up rejecting. If you go into I'm Mexican, so if you go into a Mexican neighborhood and in the south side of Chicago, you're going to fucking get a lot of bad. You're just going to. There's going to be some bad credit. There's going to be some credit risk there for banks to give mortgages to. Yeah. So you're going to have probably more rejections in a certain demographic area of a certain part of a city than you are in other parts. And so to me, like, that just sounds like they're trying to balance things out, to try to make some kind of equal footing. If you were to go to an affluent neighborhood, you're going to probably get fewer rejections. If you're in an affluent neighborhood where everybody seems to be employed and gainfully employed, and stuff, and they have assets and everything, you're going to get fewer of those people getting rejected unless they're trying to buy outside their means. And it to me, it sort of just lacks common sense.
Well, on that note, dude, let's wrap this up. We're just gonna stop the recording. We can hang out for a few more minutes, but let's kind of get this show going here. Hey, thanks for joining. We're gonna do the real estate news the first Wednesday of every month for the news for the preceding month or prior month. So thanks for being with us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening to me on iTunes, please write a review, as it is one of the only ways that I have to help improve the show. You can visit me on my website at www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow.com.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'll see you. Yeah, see you later. Great show. Thanks for everyone that came, and look forward to next week's show.
All right, cool.
All right, play that music.
Speaking of Southside Chicago.